I'm going to read through 7 articles, all true crime. Several of them are pretty grim. They include child murder. Things are going to get pretty dark. I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail reading through the articles. So I do give you a trigger warning and encourage you not to watch everything if you get a little bit upset, which you might well do. The full video will be on YouTube. I'm likely to separate the videos as well. There might be some individual articles turned into videos. I also make shorts. I also do missing person videos for Australia. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. Give me some feedback. Do you like this? Do you not like it? Do you agree? Do you disagree with anything I have to say? I might give my opinion here and there. I'm going to start off by giving you the headlines for the 7 articles that I'll be reading through. The first is in regards to the mother whose autistic daughter, 16 years of age, was dragged from home by police in the United Kingdom after saying that a female officer was a lesbian like Nana. So the 16-year-old autistic girl has been accused of being a homophobe and was detained. The second article is in regards to Star Hobson, and it goes over some of the thoughts of family members of Star Hobson, notably Star Hobson's great-grandfather, who was ready to welcome home Star Hobson's mother, who is currently in jail for causing or allowing the death of Star Hobson. She was tragically killed in September 2020 at the tender age of 16 months old. It's a heartbreaking story. I've gone over the case before, but we're going to read through that article. Again, if it gets too dark for you, take a break. You don't have to listen. The next article is in regards to an 11-year-old boy who shot an 8-year-old girl, her name Genesis Dockery, in the head. Tragically, she died. The 11-year-old is currently in custody. We're going to go through the details of that. Things get even darker. A man tortured, drugged, beat and sodomized a toddler. It's an absolutely awful situation, the worst. And I'm going to read through that. So again, I give you a trigger warning. The next one is also extremely grim. It's in regards to a mother who allegedly starved her infant son, 5 months old. He died of malnutrition. His twin brother was thankfully saved, but he too was in a dreadful, dreadful state, skin and bones. We're going to read through the details there. We're going to move on to another really, really awful story. A mother pleads guilty. She takes a plea deal in regards to torturing and killing her 4-year-old son. His name, Judah Morgan. Absolutely awful. We're going to go through the details there. And last but not least, I'm going to go over the details of an article in regards to Shyanne-Lee Tatnall, who was a missing person, a 14-year-old. I made a Missing Person Australia video in regards to her just a few weeks back, and tragically she has been found deceased. The details of the discovery came out a couple of weeks ago. I have been intending on covering this story, but time has gotten away from me, so I'm going to go over that article a little bit belatedly. But as I say, I'm going to go through 7 articles. They're all of a grim nature. I will be putting some YouTube shorts out there. I will be making some of the articles into individual videos. And this is a bit of a complete version for everything that I'm going to cover today, which is Sunday, 13th of August, 2023. So we're going to start with the first article. And I'm going to play a video which is going to show the incident in question. I'll be playing the audio. That's going to go on for around 2 minutes. And then after that, I'll start reading through the article.
She's made a comment in her own house. You've got it on camera. She hasn't said anything to you. Don't matter. She never got matter. She's getting arrested. She's getting arrested. Why are you doing? Units coming. Don't worry. She hasn't done anything. She's autistic. I don't care. She's autistic. I know you're arrested. I'm telling you, I've got units coming. She's going to be arrested tonight. I'll wait till the police officer's coming. I'll explain. If I get put in, that's why we brought her in the first place. Me if I get put in, calm down. She's autistic. Can you stop staring at her, please? She's got autism. Can you just stand there? She's in a cupboard. She can't go anywhere. She can't go anywhere. Stand there, dear. They're going to remove her for what? Because you're bothered. Then she said the word lesbian. Her nana is a lesbian. She's married to a woman. She's not homophobic. Look what you're clenching your fist. Go away from my teenage daughter.
What is up with you?
There is something wrong with you, mate. She didn't aim it at the police officer.
Homophobic remarks at my colleague.
It's not a homophobic remark. She said, I think she's a lesbian like Nana.
If you want to bully people, you'll just get one of them badges there. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Where'd it go? Where's this? Does it go into right under there?
She's autistic. She don't like people touching her. She will have a meltdown. She won't come out. She's got autism. I'm Lisa.
So she can come out. Because we're trying not to do this, aren't we? We've been trying for a long time.
But she hasn't done nothing wrong. That officer out there has assaulted me for no reason. She's got autism. She's autistic, man.
The issue is, if an officer decides to arrest her...
She got arrested.
No,
they brought her home.
She's under arrest now.
No, but she was going upstairs and she made a comment to me, and that officer ran in my house and assaulted me and tried to get to my daughter for now.
If you want to make a complaint about any of it, that's fine.
I am going to.
That will have been on.
I am going to. Yeah, because it is on, and she has.
She's now under arrest.
She was full of rage and she ran in the house and she barged me into this corner.
A mother whose autistic daughter was dragged from home by 7 cops after saying that a female officer was a lesbian like Nana is set to take legal action against the police force. The 16-year-old girl, who also suffers from spinal disability scoliosis, had been driven to her home in Leeds, West Yorkshire, United Kingdom, by officers after attending the city's gay pride celebrations with her sister when she allegedly made the so-called homophobic remark. As we saw in the video, she was later dragged away screaming by West Yorkshire police in the early hours of Monday morning, having been arrested on suspicion of homophobic public order offence. We've just seen the footage which went viral on TikTok. It was filmed by the girl's mother in their own home. So this all played out in their own home, and the mother is now seeking legal advice. She's likely to take legal action, which I would think she's entitled to do. Maybe it needs to be done. I don't really know. So the police have confirmed that they won't be taking any further action against the 16-year-old girl, but she was put through this ordeal. So instead of reading through the remainder of the article, I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview. So essentially, there was gay pride in Leeds, and the 16-year-old girl seemingly snuck out. She wasn't really allowed out. Her parents didn't want her, or her mother didn't want her going out, but she did. She also did something else that was naughty. She got drunk. She drank alcohol. In England, you're not allowed to drink alcohol until you're 18 years of age. She was only 16 years old. Very, very naughty. Guess what? Literally everybody in England starts drinking early. Literally everybody. So she was out there somewhat inebriated, and she bumped into her sister, 18 years of age. Her sister tried to get her home, but the 16-year-old was not complying. So the 18-year-old girl called the police. Hey officers, my sister's out. It's gay pride. She's had a little bit to drink. She shouldn't have. She's a very naughty girl. Could you please help me get her home safely? Thank you. So the police came, and as far as I understand, they drove the 16-year-old girl home, and they took her into the home. Everything seemed to be somewhat okay at that point. Maybe the officers wanted to have a quick word with the mother, the family, saying, hey there, she is only 16. She shouldn't really be drinking. Could you keep an eye on that, please? But whilst they were in the family home, the 16-year-old girl, again inebriated, and were told that she's autistic. She apparently said to one of the police officers, you'll see the photo, you'll know which one it is. Apparently the 16-year-old girl says that one of the officers was a lesbian like Nana. So meaning that the 16-year-old autistic girl thought that one of the female officers was lesbian like her grandma. And that's what caused offence. The officers concerned were offended by that. They were offended that somebody thought that one of them were homosexual. Oh no, shocking. How terrible that someone might think that one of the officers is gay. How terrible. So obviously the United Kingdom police force decided that the 16-year-old inebriated autistic girl making that comment in her own home in the early hours of the morning was making a dreadful homophobic remark. Oh, you awful person, 16-year-old, saying something naughty whilst drunk. So the officers insisted on arresting her. And we see in the video that the 16-year-old girl, who is autistic, claims to be autistic, seems to be quite autistic if you ask me, is panicked. She's panicking. She's huddling in a cupboard. She's punching herself. She's punching the wall. She doesn't know what's going on. The other family members are also distressed. That's why they recorded this incident. We hear the mother say to the police officers, hey police officers, she wasn't being homophobic. Her grandma is a lesbian. She loves her grandma. We're all of the understanding that homosexuality is a normal part of life. The 16-year-old girl just spent the evening at gay pride celebrating diversity. She's not a homophobic. She didn't make a homophobic remark. And I would add to that, this is my commentary at this point, I would add to that, I would say, so what if it was? So what if she did make a homophobic remark? So what? She did so in the comfort and the security of her own home. Should she be arrested for that? Really? Really? Come on. We see how many officers are in the family home trying to arrest this distressed girl, who also suffers from a physical disability, a physical condition, spinal disability scoliosis. She has severe pain, I believe, in her back. And the police officers between them couldn't say, hey, you know what? She is only 16. She is autistic. She is somewhat inebriated. This really isn't the biggest deal in the world. Why can't we just let her be? Why can't we just leave her alone? Hey, young lady, that's not a very nice thing to say. You should apologize, really, but, you know, we're humans here. We can't force you to apologize. Anyway, so the girl was detained for 20 hours. Eventually, she was released. And now, as we say, as this article says, the mother is thinking to herself, you know what? I'm really unhappy about this situation. Maybe it's going to be best for society. Maybe it will be best for my daughter if we take legal action against the police force. And I'm not very supportive of trivial litigious behavior in general. I don't like frivolent lawsuits. Ultimately, this isn't the biggest deal in the world. She was detained for 20 hours. She's been let go. No further action is going to be taken. Everyone concerned could wash their hands of this situation. But I think the family do have a good point here. This incident should not have happened. Why has this incident happened? Well, we could throw in our suggestions here. That would be one reason to take legal action so that this subject can be examined thoroughly. My opinion would be that the UK, United Kingdom, certainly West Yorkshire Police Force overreacted in a ridiculous way against a young person, against a minor who happened to be inebriated at the time, who was in their own home, is autistic, is a sufferer of spinal disability scoliosis, who said one word, lesbian. That's the offending word, lesbian. I've just said it twice in a row. Should I now face 20 years in jail? She said lesbian. Her grandmother is a lesbian. Her friends are lesbians. This is the year 2023. We're all aware that homosexuality is a thing. We're all aware that being homophobic is not to be tolerated. But let's examine that just a little bit. And I'm going to say just a little bit. I'm not going to rip that apart entirely. What does it mean to be homophobic? Well, as I say, I'm not going to rip into that entirely because if I were to, I'd likely get blocked from YouTube or something. But I'll give my 2 cents. I'll dive into that just a little bit, step into that. I think you've got casual homophobia. I think you've got casual racism. And I think you've got severe homophobia, severe racism. Now, I absolutely would say that any severe homophobia or racism or sexism or anything like that should not be tolerated and in a lot of cases should face some repercussions. Severe racism, severe discrimination of various kinds should face some consequences. It's not fair to discriminate to the extent that you're taking harmful action against another. Perhaps that's violent action. Perhaps that's damaging their ability to work or live in a certain property. Those kinds of things ought to be stamped out. But on the lower end, I think we need to be realistic. We all have brains in our heads. We all have our own opinions. We all have had our own experiences which help form those opinions. We don't all have to be 1000% tolerant of all this and all that. We can think some negative thoughts. We can think, hey, you know what? That group over there, some of them are kind of annoying for this reason, that reason. That group over there, I think they do this and that slightly wrong. We're allowed to think these things. You can't stop us from thinking these things. And that's what the UK police are trying to do. That's what I would say. The UK police are directed by the government. They're directed by the media, whomever they're directed by. But they're being directed to enforce punishment of any wrong think. And I happen to be an habitual wrong thinker. Let's look at religious groups. There's one that springs to mind, but I'm not going to mention it. And there's more than one religious group that are arguably, to some extent or another, homophobic, that take issue with homosexuals. What are you going to do, United Kingdom government? What are you going to do, West Yorkshire police? Arrest everybody that's part of a certain major religion just because they may have some negative thoughts about a certain group? Is that what you're going to do? No, you're not. You can't do that. That would be unfeasible. It would be unreasonable. So you're going to let those guys have whatever thoughts they have in their heads, but you're going to target a 16-year-old autistic girl who says something which seemingly wasn't even homophobic, and she did say that whilst inebriated and whilst in her own home. I'm going to say this as an example. I've come across articles of people displaying Nazi flags outside of their home in America. I don't actually care about that personally. I I don't care. All right, if I see an article about some guy or woman displaying a Nazi flag outside of their home on their property in the United States where you have freedom of speech, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't care. Makes no difference to me. People are allowed to have their own thoughts, their own opinions. You don't have to like all of them, but we're supposed to be tolerant, aren't we? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I would display a Nazi flag outside of my property, but my point is that different people are going to have different opinions, and we just have to accept them, accept that as a fact. Not everyone is going to be supportive of your particular group. That's just how it is. You think everyone's supportive of me? Get out of here. We just have to suck it up, don't we? And we just get on with things. We don't call the police to get people arrested and detained just because they say or think something that we don't agree with. I guess I've gone on a bit of a ramble here, longer than I ought to have done. So I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage of this article, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. If you agree, disagree with my comments, please do drop a comment. As I say, I'm pretty pro free speech. Having said that, YouTube isn't so much. And also, I do want this channel to be very respectful. So please do be respectful if you've got anything poignant to say in the comments. But anyway, I'm going to move on to the next subject. The grieving family of tragic toddler Star Hobson say that they're ready to welcome her mother back home 3 years after her girlfriend brutally killed 16-month-old Star Hobson. Little Star bled to death after being kicked or punched by scumbag Banshee Savannah Brockhill. Star was kicked with massive force at their home in Keighley, West Yorkshire. This happened in September 2020. The mother's girlfriend, Savannah Brockhill, was a nightclub bouncer, 30 years of age. She was jailed for a minimum of 25 years after being given a mandatory life sentence for murdering the defenseless toddler in a fit of temper. Star Hobson's mother, her name Frankie Smith, 22 years of age, was jailed for 8 years for causing or allowing the death. So the mother, Frankie Smith, stood by during the entire relationship that she had with Savannah Brockhill, in which Savannah Brockhill routinely beat 16-month-old Star Hobson to the point that she succumbed to those injuries in September 2020. The mother did sweet F.A. nothing. She was jailed for 8 years. There was a public outrage, rightfully so, and her sentence was increased, I believe, to 12 years. But in England, if you're a child murderer, especially if you're a woman, a vagina bearer, your sentence is meaningless. Frankie Smith is still entitled to parole, so she stood by whilst her girlfriend literally beat her 16-month-old daughter, Star Hobson, to death, but she's going to get parole approximately halfway through her jail sentence. So again, she was initially jailed for 8 years. That was extended, I believe, to 12 years, and she'll be eligible for parole at the halfway mark, so after 6 years. And this article is telling us that certain members of Frankie Smith's family, notably her great-grandfather, his name David Fawcett, is looking forward to the time that Frankie Smith, the mother that stood by whilst 16-month-old Star Hobson was beaten to death, the family members, some of them, are looking forward to when Frankie Smith returns home, when she is released from jail. So the great-grandfather, David Fawcett, says that the mother, Frankie Smith, is devastated of the fact that her child, Star Hobson, was killed. The great-grandfather misses the time that he spent with Star Hobson's mother. He used to enjoy their relationship. He used to enjoy the time that they would speak. He still visits Frankie Smith regularly, and he's ready to welcome her back home as and when she's released, as I say, likely at the halfway mark of her 12-year sentence. So Frankie Smith, the mother's defense lawyers, argued that Frankie Smith was herself a victim, that she was beaten by her own girlfriend, Savannah Brockhill, and that Frankie Smith wasn't very intelligent. She has an IQ of around 70, so I think that would classify her as being a slow learner, perhaps functionally retarded. I don't use that in a derogatory sense, of course. So the great-grandfather, and I believe other members of the family, feel sorry for the mother, Frankie Smith. They forgive her to an extent. They view the mother as being a victim herself, and they see that she's remorseful. So I'm going to comment on that. I'm going to say that I've seen situations like this before where family members of a victim that's been murdered have forgiven the murderer concerned. And that's always sat very badly with me. I find it unsettling. I don't understand it. Why forgive somebody who has committed such a heinous act? Why? I don't get it. I don't feel that I would try to forgive anybody who commits a heinous act like this. Frankie Smith, even if she was a victim, even if she does have low IQ, she still stood by whilst her baby daughter was ritually abused by her girlfriend. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. She's absolutely guilty. She should be sentenced to life in prison, if you ask me. I would not forgive her personally. But at the same time, I'm not going to blame the great-grandfather for his forgiveness. I'm not going to blame him. I feel sorry for him. I feel that he's a man who has lost his great-grandchild and is deeply saddened by that. And he feels that he's also lost his granddaughter and he's hurting. And he's trying to process this in a way that suits him, that suits his beliefs, his life views, his religion perhaps. He's trying to navigate through life as best he can, and this is a path which perhaps seems natural to him or seems his best hope, to holding on to sanity, to holding on to some form of happiness, hopefully. So I don't blame this guy at all. His forgiveness has given myself an opportunity to reflect on my unwillingness to forgive. I don't think I would change my mind in regards to being unforgiving of severe heinous acts, but that's me. And this is a guy who seemingly is a very loving person, loved his great-granddaughter, Star Hobson, loved his granddaughter, the mother of Star Hobson, Frankie Smith. He didn't want this to happen. He would have done anything to stop this from happening. And I would think that this tragedy has shaken him to the core, and this is how he's coping. He's hoping things will go back to some remnants of how they were before, some remnants of normality. It pains him, I would say, when he considers this whole tragedy. Maybe a psychologist would be able to say the great-grandfather is right to have his approach. Maybe a psychologist would say the great-grandfather is wrong to have his approach. Maybe he's in denial. Maybe he's failing to accept and absorb the evil that his daughter displayed. He's chosen to overlook that and only blame his granddaughter's girlfriend. So maybe he's in the wrong, but I don't feel that I'm in a position to judge that. And even if he is in the so-called wrong, I don't think that makes him a bad person. I don't think he is a bad person. I think he's a family member who's been touched by an absolute tragedy. And I think this serves as an example of how hurt family members are. David Fawcett is Star Hobson's great-grandfather. So these issues touch, affect, destroy the happiness, warp the mindset of so many people, family members, friends, even neighbors. You know, it's just too shocking, which is why I don't think an 8-year sentence extended to 12 years with the ability to get parole at around the halfway mark, that's not acceptable. I suspect that when murderers and such are given extremely long sentences, life or 25 years in jail or such, I think that's going to go a lot further to help soothe the mindset of family and friends of victims. They're not going to be as angered as they would be if they knew that the perpetrator, the murderer of their loved one, was going to be released after a short period of time. It's going to be a lot harder to let go if the family and friends of the victim feel that the perpetrator isn't being justly punished. They're going to harbor anger, and it's going to continue to eat away at their lives, at their happiness. That's one of the reasons why we have long sentences, to ease the mind of those touched by the tragedy. And it's not limited to family and friends. It's, it includes wider society. When I stop and consider these subjects, these murders at length, I get angry, I get rageful, and it, I'll say depresses me. It becomes too much mentally. So I'm quite good at not allowing myself to do that. The Star Hobson case was one of the first ones that I covered when I started this channel, and it was one of those which did touch me in particular. There's been about half a dozen, several of which have come from the United Kingdom, and if you allow yourself to reflect too much on them, it can bring you down. So that's why I do encourage listeners not to listen to all of my videos. If you do feel down, step away, do something else, watch some kitten videos, whatever it happens to be. Feel free to unsubscribe. I don't want you to. I'm looking to have a thriving YouTube channel. channel, but we have to protect our mental health. So, you know, to reiterate, if you feel down, step away. And I think I'm going to wrap up the article at this point. We see some of the photos. I've not posted some photos which show bruising on Star. I've not shown those photos because some may find it disturbing, and also YouTube could get a little bit angry about that. But there are photos on the Daily Mail article that I've gone through. Star's entire face, her cheek, is covered in bruises. She's got a black eye. And with that, I could never forgive either the mother's girlfriend, Savannah Brockhill, or the mother herself. She stood by, let it happen. Even though she was perhaps a victim herself, doesn't matter. She still should have acted. Even though she's got a low IQ, doesn't matter. She still should have acted. If she's able to determine right from wrong, then she should have acted. So I'm going to wrap things up at this point. Full condolences to the family and friends of Star Hobson. I'm going to say with particular note to the great-grandfather who was discussed in this article, David Fawcett. To me, he seems like a loving man who's very hurt. Lost springs to mind. I wish him the best. I don't agree with his forgiveness, or rather, his forgiveness wouldn't work for me. But if it works for him, then I guess I'm glad. If he's able to get some kind of peace in his mindset, then I am glad. So I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. Feel free to drop me a comment. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you disagree with me. Either way is fine, but I'm gonna thank you for your time and I'll move on to the next article. An 8-year-old girl has tragically died after her babysitter's 11-year-old son allegedly shot her in the head using a gun that he stole from a relative's safe. The 8-year-old girl concerned, her name Genesis Dockery, was shot. This happened July 23rd in Fayetteville, North Carolina, just 1 hour after her father dropped her off at the nanny's home, the babysitter's home, with Genesis's 5-year-old sister. The babysitter's son, 11 years old, allegedly got his hands on a gun and shot her in the head. Genesis was rushed to hospital, but tragically she died 2 days later. Genesis has been described as an energetic young girl who enjoyed making dancing videos, and she loved everybody. Her family have been left heartbroken over the death and are campaigning for justice. We're told that the 11-year-old boy, the babysitter's son, is currently in custody. Investigators said there is enough evidence to charge him with manslaughter. So I guess we could comment manslaughter, not murder. Does that mean that this wasn't premeditated, that it was an accident? I don't think we know at this point. So I'm going to say full condolences, of course, to the family and friends of the victim, 8-year-old Genesis Dockery. We see the photos of the father and the mother. Both are absolutely destroyed. You can see in the photos they are just emotionally ripped apart. You can also see in the photos their family and friends also ripped apart, saddened, hugely touched by the unnecessary loss of Genesis Dockery, an energetic young girl who loved to dance. She loved everybody, so she was a ray of sunshine, and she's been taken away. And her life was taken away by an 11-year-old boy who may be charged with manslaughter. Maybe he'll face other charges. Maybe those charges will be upgraded to murder. That 11-year-old boy, his life destroyed. His family's life destroyed. So how did this happen? Well, ultimately it happened because the 11-year-old boy had access to guns in the family home. With that, Genesis' parents are campaigning to increase gun violence awareness. And I applaud that. I applaud Genesis's parents, her father Fawn Dockery and her mother Kimberly Dockery, for responding to this awful tragedy with positivity by trying to make a difference, by trying to improve society, by calling for gun violence awareness. We know that this situation is going to happen again. We know that in a couple of days' time, I'll be making another video about another child who had access to an unsecured gun, who shot themselves, who shot another sibling, another parent even. It happens all the time in America, and only in America. And the reason why it happens in America is because you have a lot of guns. I'm pro-gun, to let you know. I support gun ownership personally, but only because you have the guns already. So you need to protect yourselves. Citizens need to protect themselves against criminals. The criminals have guns. The citizens need to have guns. That's how I view it. But with that comes enormous risk that children may access the guns. Felons may access the guns. The mentally ill, the suicidal, drug addicts, alcoholics, alcoholics may access the guns, which is why you need gun violence awareness. You need to secure your guns away from those who are not responsible with guns, and that obviously includes children. There is a little bit more to the story, to the case, and that is that the 11-year-old boy in question, the shooter, made multiple social media posts showing that he had access to guns. So I've not seen those social media posts, but seemingly he would fantasize about having guns, and seemingly he's accessed at least one gun before and shown that somehow on social media. So there is the argument that his parents ought to have been a lot more aware, not only of the boy's access to guns within the home, but also his fantasies in relation to guns. I'm going to comment on that part. I play video games. I've always played video games. I'm a grown adult, by the way. Still play video games. A lot of the video games are shooting, you know, Call of Duty, Battlefield. A lot of them are set in modern day warfare environments, and it's fun. It's fun. Guns can be fun, or the idea of having guns can be fun. I've never handled a gun myself personally, never shot a gun, but I think it's fair to acknowledge that children, perhaps particularly boys, maybe not necessarily, but they're going to be inclined to play video games. They're going to have some level of interest, however casual, in guns, and I guess a parent needs to monitor that. It's normal, but you don't want a child to become overly obsessed and a real fantasist in regards to guns. That doesn't seem good, especially if those children have potential access to guns in the family home. So what's the answer? I guess the answer is what the parents are trying to do: increase gun violence awareness, educate the community that tragedies like this happen way too often. The life of Genesis taken away, 8 years of age, a ray of sunshine for her family and friends, whose lives are now, I use the word destroyed, it's not entirely correct. Let's hope and pray that her family and friends are able to find happiness moving forward. It's going to take them a long time. The answer is increasing awareness and just hoping that more people act responsibly when they have guns in the home. I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. I'm going to thank you for your time. I'm going to move on to the next subject. A 30-year-old man in California will spend the rest of his life behind bars for abominably attacking his girlfriend's 2-year-old son, torturing, beating, drugging, and sodomizing the child with an unknown object. The scumbag, the evil psychopath in question, Jeremy Dawn Wilson, has been ordered to serve a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole for the 2020 attack on the boy. The county sheriff said, "Today we see the rightful sentencing of a monstrous individual who committed vile acts against an innocent 2-year-old child. This life imprisonment stands as a resolute message that such abhorrent behavior will not be tolerated, will never be tolerated, and we will relentlessly protect our community's most vulnerable citizens." I'm going to applaud that. I support life in prison for this absolute piece of shit, and I agree with the county sheriff's words that it does send a message to the wider community that this abhorrent behavior will not be tolerated. So this is in regards to an incident which happened February 2020 in a neighborhood called Forest Hill in California. The 2-year-old was found by his mother and immediately rushed to the emergency room. Doctors told investigators that the boy had over a dozen fresh adult bite marks covering his entire body. He suffered extreme bruising and swelling on his face and mouth. In addition, the 2-year-old had bruising, lacerations, and an abrasion on his genitalia. In summary, the boy was tortured, beaten, drugged, and sodomized with an unknown object in his own home. Who would do such a thing? Well, we know the guy's name, Jeremy Dawn Wilson, thankfully sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And guess what? Yes, that's right. He was the live-in boyfriend of the victim's mother. We've heard that before, haven't we? The mother's boyfriend tortured the child. We come across this a lot. So if we were to ask ourselves why this scumbag would do such a terrible thing, beat, drug, sodomize a 2-year-old boy, his girlfriend's son, why would he do that? Well, obviously because he's sick in the head. That would be one answer. But a more detailed answer would be because he was angry at the mother. He was frustrated with the mother for whatever reason. Hey, guess what? I'm married. I've got a wife. I get frustrated with her. She gets frustrated with me. It's part of life. We deal with it. Not always in the best possible way, but, we deal with it. As does everyone else on this planet, apart from this sick cunt be. He was frustrated, angry at his girlfriend, the child's mother, and he thought, you know what I'll do? My girlfriend loves her son, so I'm gonna hurt her son. I'm gonna beat her son. I'm gonna drug her son. I'm gonna torture her son. I'm gonna bite her son. I'm gonna beat, bruise, attack, sodomize her son because I'm annoyed at her. So he purposefully caused severe pain to the 2-year-old boy out of spite, and he's shown no remorse. So I hope and pray that the boy concerned has made a full recovery. He would be 5 years, perhaps 6 years old at this point. So hopefully he's come over the physical harm that was inflicted upon him by his mother's boyfriend, and hopefully he overcomes the trauma, mental trauma, emotional trauma, psychological trauma that he would undoubtedly have had inflicted upon him. I've had one commentator previously remind me that humans, and perhaps particularly children, are extremely resilient. We're adaptable, we're flexible. We can cope with a shit ton, pardon my French. We can cope with a lot. Trauma can affect us. Perhaps it's inevitable that it will affect us, but at the same time, a lot of us, not necessarily all, but a lot of us can cope with a great deal, especially if we're provided with assistance, therapy, support from loved ones. Perhaps especially if we're able to face the issues relatively early in life, be able to process them, and ultimately recognize that they're innocent. As being a victim, they're innocent. They did nothing to provoke such attacks. I mean, that's my understanding, is that a lot of people blame themselves. I guess a lot of us, most of us, all of us, I think perhaps a lot of us, can tend to be introspective, to try to self-evaluate, try to analyze the situation. And part of that analysis is, hey, look, is my take on this right? Am I looking at this the wrong way? What did I do wrong here? Yeah, what, perhaps there's something wrong with me. And a lot of people that are victimized in one way or another think that. I'm thinking that perhaps that's not entirely relevant in this case, given the boy was so young, 2 years old. But maybe it is relevant. Maybe his introspection will come at a later point. I don't know. I'm going on a bit of a ramble, I guess. I'm very, very glad that the scumbag in question has been given life in prison with no opportunity for parole. That's absolutely the best sentence, the most appropriate sentence for this scumbag, Jeremy Dawn Wilson, 30 years old, purposefully tortured and SA'd his girlfriend's 2-year-old son. I'm very glad that the 2-year-old boy has survived. We're told that he was found by the mother and immediately rushed to the emergency room. We're not provided with any further update or information in regards to the boy's condition, but I would presume, guess, hope, and pray that he has already made a full recovery physically. To the mother, I say, I'm sorry that this happened to your child, but I'm also going to at least somewhat point some portion of blame to the mother. She did the right thing. As soon as she saw her child injured, she rushed him to the hospital. She did the right thing in that regard, but could she have known that her boyfriend was an utter psychopath? Yeah, I think that she could have known that. I don't know that for sure, but I think that if you're in a relationship, you're living with somebody who is capable of doing the awful things that this scumbag did, there would have been other significant signs that he was a pervert, that he was sick in the head, that he was violent. I could be wrong, but I think that the mother likely could have done more to protect her child prior to the incident. Basically got the F away from this scumbag weirdo. But for whatever reason, I don't harbour too much hate or such towards the mother. I wish her the best moving forward, I guess. I hope that she is a loving mother and is able to provide her 2-year-old son and any other children the support they need. I also hope that the scumbag in question is afforded ample time in general population, such that the other inmates and even the guards can regularly have nice little chats with him, speak to him about his treatment of his girlfriend's 2-year-old son, ask him how he would feel if such injuries were placed upon him. How would he like that? How would he like to be physically tortured, scared for his life? I'm not going to go through the full details of the direction I'm going, so I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. Again, please don't watch too many of my videos. Almost every last one of the videos I make are dark, and watching too many can affect your mental health. So dip in, dip out, subscribe, unsubscribe, do whatever you have to do. Watch a lot of kidden videos, that's what I do. Gonna move on to the next subject. Take care. A 24-year-old mother in North Carolina may be facing the death penalty for allegedly starving one of her 5-month-old sons to death on Christmas Day 2022, whilst police say that the victim's emaciated twin brother was only hours away from meeting the same horrific fate. The scumbag in question, the banshee, the mother, Tamia Tashawn Tomlin, has been charged with 1 count of first-degree murder in regards to her infant son's death. We're told that the mother was first taken into custody December 28th, 2022, at which point she was charged with 2 counts of felony child abuse resulting in serious physical injury. She's remained incarcerated in jail since her arrest. We're told that the mother called 911 on Christmas Day last year and reported that she found one of her infant sons unresponsive. This happened in Greensboro, North Carolina. The mother claimed that she had fed both of the twins before putting them down for a nap. She fell asleep herself, and then she woke up a couple hours later. Her blankets were soiled, so I think she's saying that one of her twin boys soiled the blanket, and she said that one of the twins wasn't breathing. So, being the great mother that she is, according to her, she called 911. First responders arrived. They took both twins to the hospital. Tragically, one of the twins was pronounced dead at the hospital. Again, we're not told the boy's name. We are told that the 5-month-old baby boy was severely malnourished. He was skin and bones. You could visibly see his joints. A subsequent autopsy determined that the deceased infant's manner of death was a homicide and that the cause of death was malnourishment and starvation, as well as having a low heart rate and hypothermia. The 5-month-old boy was starved to death. He wasn't fed. In fact, he was found to be 5 pounds in weight. 5 pounds? 5 months old. Born 4.5 pounds. Died weighing only 5 pounds. That is sick. Where were the doctors? I'm going to say that. Where were the doctors? I'm all for personal freedom. I'm all for not having an invasive state, but I think the state authorities need to have protections in place. I'm sure there are some protections in place, but they need to have better protections in place such that newborn children have to be visited by a doctor or at least a nurse. Their progress must be monitored by the authorities to avoid this kind of situation. That's what occurs to me. If a doctor or a nurse had attended to the twins, they would have identified that they were being severely malnourished, that they were being starved. Their lives could have been protected. So to be clear on that point, one of the twins died, the other survived, thankfully, but it's believed that the other was very near death. Hours away from dying. The surviving twin was also severely malnourished, also suffering from hypothermia. Again, the blessing here is that that twin has survived. So hopefully they've made a recovery or are on the way to making a recovery. 5 pounds at 5 months old. We're told that they were both born prematurely. They weighed 4.5 pounds at birth, but only 5 pounds at the age of 5 months. We're told that if the mother is found guilty of first-degree murder, she'll be facing either death or life in prison, which I support. I support the severity of that sentence, if found guilty. Now, the mother is claiming that she's not guilty, nothing to do with her, she was a good mom, apparently. And that's supported by the mother's sister, who's claiming that between the two of them, they did feed both twins just prior to the 5-month-old death. So who are we to believe? The doctors, the medical examiners, the fact that both of the twins were described as being severely emaciated, their joints visible, suffering from hypothermia, purposefully starved. That's according to the medical examiners. That's why there's a charge of murder, because the 5-month-old that lost their life was deemed to have been purposefully, knowingly starved. So do we believe the experts, or do we believe the mom, who claims it had nothing to do with her? She had already fed the children. And again, her sister supports that. I don't buy it myself. If children are fed regularly, they don't become severely malnourished. They don't become skin and bone. Simple, basic facts. If there was a medical condition such that the children were not able to easily gain weight, well, then that ought to have been identified and addressed. The mother would have had access to doctors, I believe. Not quite sure how things work in America, but I hope that a mother, regardless of their medical insurance status, regardless of their wealth, I would hope that a mother has access to doctors. So if there was a medical condition which hampered the children's ability to gain weight, then that ought to have been addressed and identified. So we're told that the scumbag in question is supposed to face court again late August, later this month. I don't believe that's the beginning of the trial. At this point, she seems to be claiming that she's innocent. Perhaps she'll need to be putting in a formal plea on that next date, August 22nd. We don't know. But either way, I hope justice is served. If she is guilty, which it seems to me she is, I hope she gets the maximum sentence, which is either death or life in jail. Either or. Don't really mind, to be honest. If she gets life in jail, then hopefully she can suffer. And I say that with all sincerity. What goes around comes around. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If you make another human suffer to that extent, then I have no issue with that person suffering themselves. I'm going to wrap things up at this point. Going to remind you not to listen to too many videos that I make. They're all extremely depressing. If this one has touched you in particular, take a break, go and do something else. But I will be moving on to another article in just a moment. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit, and take care. A 27-year-old mother in Indiana will likely spend several decades behind bars for her role in torturing and killing her 4-year-old son, his name Judah Morgan. Tragically, Judah was starved, beaten, bound with duct tape, and kept in a dark basement before he died in October 2021. The mother, Mary Yoder, pleaded guilty to 1 count of neglect resulting in the death of a dependent and 1 count of domestic battery to a child, both felonies relating to the death of her son, Judah Morgan. The mother admitted to abusing Judah and at least one of her other children, but she also failed to intervene when her husband, 30-year-old Alan Morgan, regularly subjected the child to torturous punishments. She stood by, let it happen, enabled the ongoing torture of her own son. Didn't do anything. Didn't go to authorities. Didn't act like a mother bear. Didn't protect her child, who ultimately was murdered by her husband. The scumbag, Alan Morgan, was sentenced to 70 years in prison after pleading to multiple felonies, including murdering his own son, Judah Morgan. So the mother essentially has made a plea deal, accepted a plea arrangement. In return, prosecutors have dropped additional charges of neglect of a dependent, one of which involved cruel confinement. So she's still going to face trial. She's pled guilty to 1 count of neglect resulting in the death of a dependent and 1 count of domestic battery to a child. She is facing several decades in jail, in prison. So generally, I'm against plea deals. I guess it's a matter of how much leniency they provide. In this case, it seems likely, as the article's telling us, that the mother will serve several decades in jail. So in my mind, several decades is a long time. I'd rather get a guilty verdict than risk having a child murderer walk free. Or to be clear, the mother in this case didn't perform the act of murder. She didn't beat and torture Judah herself, but she let it happen. She was aware that her son, Judah Morgan, 4 years of age, was ritually and regularly abused extensively by her husband, Alan Morgan. She didn't do anything. So okay, she's not guilty of performing the actual acts, but she is guilty of standing by, letting it happen. Ultimately, authorities found Judah's bloodied naked body, wrapped in a blanket inside of a bedroom, October the 11th, 2021. I believe he was deceased at that point. He had been beaten, tortured by his father, Alan Morgan, not for the first time. So again, the scumbag father faced trial last year. He's been sentenced to 70 years in jail, in prison, and he was found to be guilty of routinely, physically and emotionally abusing his son Judah. The father regularly beat and punished his son to the point of torture, locking him up in the family's dark basement, naked, for days at a time. Why would he do such things? Why would he do that to any human, or indeed any living being? Well, because Judah was a child. He had toilet training issues, so the father acted in this way, withheld food and water, duct taped Judah's mouth. What a sick scumbag. I've got to say at this point that I really do hope that the fellow inmates that are serving time alongside the father, Alan Morgan, I hope the other inmates and indeed the guards have plenty of opportunity to spend some time having nice little conversations with Alan Morgan, the father, about his treatment of Judah, asking him why he would do such sick, evil, twisted, psychopathic, barbaric things things to his son. Surveillance footage from inside the home showed that the father punched Judah at least 13 times. He then picked him up by his neck, dropped him to the floor, and left him in the dark basement. There was no furniture in the basement. He was there just on the, I guess, concrete. We're told that he was left there naked. What a sick, absolute mother. On another day, video showed the father punching Judah at least 15 times. I'm going to say something, it's pretty obvious what I'm about to say, but I don't know, maybe it's worth repeating. The size and weight and strength and development of an adult versus a child is, I don't know. An adult is just so much bigger and stronger than a child. The father was a 30-year-old man. We've got the 1 or 2 images of him. He would have man strength. He's a strong man. Judah Morgan was 4 years old. He's a child. He's a feeble, weak child. As a 4-year-old child, Judah had 0 strength. None. And this grown man would punch him 13 times, punch him 15 times, at least on another occasion. That is just brutal. And it comes as no surprise that Judah died from blunt force trauma to the head, which caused massive bleeding on his brain. That was determined by an autopsy. So that's really the full details there. We're told that the mother's facing a maximum sentence of 40 years for the neglect resulting in death charge, and up to 6 years for the other charge. So up to a maximum 46 years. I'm sure some of you will be unhappy with that. Some of you will want her to be locked up for life. I would too, but again, if the plea deal has served to guarantee a conviction and guarantee that she's going to face decades in jail, in prison, then I'm happy with that personally. So I'm going to wrap up at this point. Of course, full condolences to the sane family and friends of the 4-year-old boy who tragically had his life taken away from him by his own father, effectively whilst his own mother stood by and watched, stood by and failed to intervene as he was regularly and ritually abused in a whole host of different ways, beaten, bound, thrown into a dark basement naked, with no furniture, duct taped. It's just sick. How the F could the mother stand by and allow that to happen? How the F does that happen? How can she not run to the authorities immediately? How could she not run to her own family, her parents, her siblings, her friends? I'll say this, how could she not run to the local biker gang? Say, hey biker gang, my husband's an absolute piece of shit. Can you take care of him, please? Of course, that would be illegal, so I wouldn't condone that, obviously. I say for YouTube's benefit, of course. How could she do that? She is evil. If she isn't evil, then she's an extremely troubled and weak, pathetic human. She serves no purpose, no benefit to society. 4-year-old innocent boy tortured and his life gone. We're told that the scumbag mother has other children. We're not provided with any details in that regard, but I do hope those other children are being adequately cared for. I hope that they get the support, psychotherapist support, loving support that they're going to need, because they would have witnessed this situation way too intimately. Perhaps they too were also victims. Perhaps they physically witnessed, they saw, they heard, they knew, they understood the torture that Judah was being put through. Even if they were somewhat sheltered from it, they would have learned at a certain point of what their mother and father are capable of, and that's going to be traumatic. So I do hope the other children are okay. I hope this scumbag Banshee is locked up for decades. Maximum sentence 40 years in jail for one charge, 6 years for the other. Let's go for that. Let's give her 46. Let's let her rot in jail. Let's allow the other inmates and the guards to have nice cozy chats with her every now and then. Remind her what she did. She stood by, let her husband beat, torture their son to death. I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. Again, don't watch all of my videos. They're not healthy really, are they? I don't know. I've become increasingly angry through reading through this. Actually, I've just remembered, I do apologize. I needed to have mentioned a very important point, and that is that the parents had only recently been granted custody of Judah. Judah had grown up for most of his life with a foster family. His biological parents only relatively recently gained custody of Judah. I'm not quite sure how long before his death. I think months. And of course, Judah's foster family are absolutely destroyed, have been destroyed by his death, by his murder. So their names are Jenna Hullett and her husband Phil. They raised Judah as their own from October 2017 to April 2021. And as far as I understand, they looked after Judah immediately after his birth. Why? Well, because there were abuse allegations in regards to Judah's older brother. So that family, the foster family, Jenna Harlett and her husband Phil, truly loved Judah, and they still do. So full condolences to them. I'm going to wrap things up. Take care. We're going to go through the final article that I'll be going through today, and it is another child murder. I'm sorry. It is very depressing. This article was published 2 weeks ago. I have been meaning to go over it, but I've just not found the time or mental energy to do so. So I'm going to read through that now, and this will be the last article that I read through today. So again, if you do like the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. I will be making some of the articles individual videos. If you've listened to this whole video, you won't need to listen to those. It will be cut from this longer version, edited, if you know what I mean. I've said it a couple of times, but don't watch all of my videos. It's too depressing. I feel pretty depressed now, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go through this final one. A body discovered in Tasmanian bushland has been formally identified as missing teenager Shyanne-Lee Tatnall. DNA testing confirmed the remains belong to the 14-year-old who was last seen alive in Launceston in April 2023. Police acting on a tip-off found human remains 52 kilometers away at Nabaula in the state's northeast, and the body was discovered a little over 2 weeks ago. Police swiftly taped off and scoured a nearby Scottsdale property. They sent in cadaver dogs as well as a specialist divers team to search a dam. A 36-year-old man, his name Christopher Jordan, was arrested and charged over the death of Shyanne-Lee Tatnall. He is unknown to the family. It's unknown whether Shyanne-Lee Tatnall had any kind of relationship or knew him in any way. Police believe that the arrested and charged man Christopher Jordan came across Shyanne-Lee on the night that she vanished before taking her to his Scottsdale property, where it's believed that he murdered her and then later dumped her body 24 kilometers away in remote bushland. Shyanne-Lee's body has been confirmed as such through DNA testing. The prime suspect is due to face court for a preliminary hearing, in a few days' time, August the 16th. Shyanne-Lee would have turned 15 years old on August the 8th. We're told that she was living in a youth at-risk centre in the 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. She seems to have had a troubled upbringing. Her father is in jail. I'm not going to go through the details of that. It's perhaps not relevant. Condolences to all of her family, including her father. We're told that she had been staying with her grandmother after she left her family home due to a series of rows, and she'd been staying at a number of youth centres, youth homes, and was generally considered a troubled teen suffering from behavioural issues as well as depression. On the night that Shyanne-Lee disappeared, she was walking from the Brisbane Street Centre to see a friend in the suburb of Ravenswood, a 4.3 kilometres walk away. So that's quite a long walk. I think that's about a half an hour, 40-minute walk. She was captured on CCTV showing her walking alone through the dark on an industrial road towards Henry Street Bridge, and that's the area where makeshift memorials have been placed. A number of bouquets of flowers, teddy bears, notes. That's pretty much all the information that we have at this point. As I say, this article was published 2 weeks ago. I've been slow in getting around to cover this topic. I haven't seen any further articles in regards to Shyanne-Lee since then, but as this article says, the prime suspect is facing a hearing on the 16th of August, so that's midweek. So if there is more information, I will try to keep on top of things a little bit more promptly than I have. Of course, full condolences to family and friends of Shyanne-Lee Tatnall, 14 years old, murdered, missing since April of this year. She's had a troubled life up until that, or certainly the last year or more has been troubled. Believed to have suffered behavioural issues, seemingly troubles at home, which is commonplace. Rows are normal. But given that she had to leave home, or felt the need to leave home and stay in multiple different youth centres, youth homes, indicates that there was a lot of problems at home for her, which is very sad, but we don't know the reasons why. Seemingly, those reasons are unrelated to her death. At the point of this article being published, the police seemingly are unaware of any connection between the prime suspect and the family, but perhaps more information will change that view. So I'm going to wrap things up at this point. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, like, comment, subscribe, share the video as you see fit. Please don't watch too many of my videos. They're almost all of a very dark nature, and they can get wearing. They can trouble you a little bit too much. They trouble me a little bit too much from time to time. So it's okay if you choose not to subscribe. It's okay if you choose to unsubscribe and give the channel a bit of a pass for a few weeks or so. That's fine. But I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to thank you for your time and take care.